could you read my mind? Okay. Good morning, folks. This is a meeting of the Vermont Climate Council Steering Committee. Here's our agenda for the day. It's also in the chat. Jane and I spoke earlier this week and thought about how we might use our time today. I'm interested in your views on this. If this seems right, if you want to add something, feel free. Liz Amler has sort of updates of what's happened since we all got off the phone in late June. Some wrap up and things that Liz can tell us how things are going. And then Sophie, I think, is going to join us, or maybe Liz, you could help with that if need be, talking about the plan for the folks who have been hired to do proofreading and then some plain language editing of sections of the cap and some formatting and stuff like that. So if Sophie's here, she can do that, or maybe Liz Amler, you can pinch hit if you have that information. What I want to make sure we spend a good chunk of time on today is planning for the fall. What is it the council needs to be doing in the fall? What are the priorities from your perspectives as steering committee? Let's capture that. We talk about meetings on the books, what's on the books, what's not on the books in terms of meetings, so what you think is needed. So that's the plan for today. We will have some public comment at the end from observers before we finish up at 9:30. Anything else, steering committee members, that you think is urgent for us to talk about? Okay, great. And we
Just
do have one more. Oh, sorry, Jared, I cut you off.
sorry, David, just to jump in. I was looking at the first agenda item on the approval of the minutes, and
Is it not there?
the minutes from the last meeting are there, but it also says that we would approve the minutes from June 5th at this meeting, and
Oh,
those
whoops.
don't seem to be linked. So I think there's a second set of minutes that we may want, if available. If not, presumably we could approve
Yeah, it
that.
doesn't link through. I'm not sure. Maybe Charlotte. Are those minutes done? The
There,
June 5th minutes?
the June 5th minutes should be done. Let me look for them.
In any case, we may push them out one more month indeed, because if you all haven't had a chance to look at them, it seems that it might not be the move.
I thought that, for what it's worth, I thought that the June 10th minutes looked good to go.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay. And we have on the books, maybe Liz Amler can help. We have one more steering committee meeting before September, right? We do have an August meeting on the books or not?
Check.
Okay. Just to make sure that if we do want a September meeting, or that we have some time to before then. Okay. Well, Liz is checking that. Why don't we not try to do that June 5th thing, but let's write that in the notes right now, Charlotte, that we need to get that approved in our next meeting.
I don't see an August meeting scheduled, so we'll need to schedule an August meeting.
Great. Let's talk about that in the
Date.
8:55 slot. Okay,
Okay.
super. All right, so let's go ahead and approve minutes if folks are okay with that, with the caveat that we're not doing the June 5th things, we're just doing these ones. And we'll make sure we come back to June 5th later. Any concerns with the June, what were these, 10th meeting minutes? Any concerns, folks? Anybody want a little more time? Okay, hearing no concerns or requests for more time, let's consider these approved. All right. Liz Amler, you had some things you wanted to mention. I'm just clicking through to your slide here. Is it helpful for me to have this slide up?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So yeah, this is a recap of what's been happening with the cap since since it was adopted. Sophie had compiled the climate action plan that was covered in the press. If you click on those links, and this is all linked from the agenda, you'll be able to go directly to the article or news clip that was covering the climate action plan coverage there, and then I also just try to compile what I've been working on, cap related, to prepare for the design and copy editing process. So there's been a lot of organizing and reformatting of the tables and figures to get this ready to go for the designer. There was Leslie Ann had let me know there was missing figures in the climate change chapter, so I had added that. Sophie had noted that the fall input sessions were missing in a table that had covered all of the public engagement related to the climate action plan in the public engagement chapter. So we added that. And I also added a cover page to the appendices and updated the table of contents. So there's still been a lot of time dedicated to the climate action plan and getting this all ready to go for the design and copy edit process. And then I also just included a snapshot here of the website itself where folks are able to access the climate action plan, as well as the priority recommendations. And you're not able to do it here, but if you were to scroll down on that page, you would see the individual chapters that were listed as we were going through the final editing process. And then below that is the public engagement and like summaries of various spring input events.
If you
So
like,
that's
I can
all.
do it in real
Oh,
time here.
great. Okay. Yeah. So that all lives, I'll just say this all lives on this page, and is accessible to the public. And I think that's kind of the recap of what's been happening, post adoption.
Thanks, Liz.
Yep.
Any questions for Liz Amler about what's been going on? Welcome, Jane. Good to see you. Okay, great. Thanks, Liz. Very helpful. It's really quite clever, I think, to have it accessed this way, right? It feels like this is an easy access kind of thing in the meantime. And maybe this is the long-term plan as well. I'm not sure, Liz Amler. But this is a nice way to get here. Okay. Great. The next thing on our agenda is maybe Jane, you could do this. I put Sophie here, but if you could.
I was planning to do it. Thanks.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Sorry.
No worries. Want me to share? I'm going to share my screen. If that's
Perfect.
okay. Oh, someone else is sharing.
I don't think it's me.
Oh,
I mean,
it
I just
must-
stopped.
You must be because you just stopped. Hold on. Okay. Nice to see everybody. Hope you're all having a nice summer. I think we've talked about this sort of ancillary once in a while here and there about the capacity in the CAO to bring on a contractor. This contractor is working for us in multiple pathways right now. It's helping support the climate office on the resilience implementation strategy, which I think we'll talk a little bit about as a topic that we might want to talk about with the council in fall, just to present to you the state initiative that also launched on July 1st. But the editor and graphic designer is also providing some additional capacity to us on the climate action plan in a strategic way. And Sophie and I wanted to tee up for you all remind you all, which I believe we've talked about, the three main things that consultant will be working on. And then talk with you about the touch points and the timeline because there are tight turnarounds. And this is really intended to tee you all up for your conversation you'll have with David right after this about what the topics are you want to touch on this fall as a climate council and what the needed schedule is to address those. So for the climate action plan and the consultant, you might recall that we have capacity in the contract to edit grammatically and for sort of stylistic isn't the right term, sort of formatting is the right term, the whole climate action plan. So it's a read through of the whole plan for grammar, punctuation, spell check, etc. As well as in the end, I know Liz and Sophie have caught like not everybody did the same formatting on like what's a title font size versus what's a subtitle and etc. So she will be reading the whole cap strategically to make those edits and to do cleanup. Those are coming to the CAP on to the climate office by Monday, September 8th, and we have to turn around comments in a week. So we have to be able to read it, make sure that there wasn't any intent of, misalignment on the like through editing that changed the intent of the language. I really think this is a cleanup exercise, and if there was something that I would recommend that the council be comfortable with the climate office just managing. It's this first component, the editing of the cap, because it is not intended to change any of the sort of storytelling and the intent of the language within the cap. But I did want to put it out there in case the council feels differently. The next two components I do see as collaborative with the Climate Council in a very intentional way. So want to flag those, which is you might recall we're sort of streamlining and editing to create a summary document of the climate action plan for the first cap. We did this with a consultant also. So people can pull up on our website or we can use in outreach and engagement, like very 4-page, quick, graphically edited summary doc. And in order to do that, she will also be plain language editing, the executive summary, and the priority actions chapter. So those two chapters we really see as key to that summary document. And those are the ones where I do think there'll be some back and forth because plain language editing could unintentionally change sort of the intent of the chapter. And that's something that, as not the authors of, we want to make sure we do it in close alignment with all of you. So that summary of those documents are due the 12th, comments due the 19th, and we'll get a final summary of the text by October 17th. And then all of that is in service of creating a graphically designed summary document. And the language from that midterm item will be used to give us a graphically designed draft by Friday, November 7th, and then again a week turnaround to get them comments with final due strategically before the legislative session so that you all have it as a tool to use with legislators or any other kind of outreach you want to do. We had hoped to be able to get them sooner, but just wanted to flag this timeline is hopefully intended to help serve the legislative session. I'm going to share one more slide, which doesn't have much on it, but I do just want to flag that something else for you all to be talking about as you're thinking about your schedule is that the Climate Action Plan, the Climate Action Office has capacity to do 2 virtual rollouts of the Climate Action Plan. So we won't be doing any kind of large-scale statewide fall kind of roadshow or anything with the Climate Action Plan, but we do have capacity with the support of CBI and staff capacity to do 2 online sessions, probably typical to what we normally do, which is like a lunchtime and an evening one to try to serve as many people as we can. And then Sophie does monthly newsletters that have quite a far-ranging impact now with a big listserv. And she plans to highlight the climate action plan. It's very hard to go back and forth from climate action office to climate action plan, but the climate action plan in the updated newsletter, which I know all of you get, and then you can use her summary to use with your networks as well. So in just thinking about those 2 public meetings, we had hoped that we might be able to do those and align them with the rollout of the graphic summary document. But I'll ask you all that if that feels too late to wait till November, December and holiday season and et cetera. Do you want to hold them and do them when legislators are back and do them in January? Is that too far past? But just want to share with you all that we have that capacity and wanted to think with you all today about when you'd like to hold those and how you want to interact with the rest of the council around planning those. So I'll go back to the first slide in case people have any questions on the dates, David, but that's all I got.
Okay, great. Jared?
Thanks, David, and thanks, Jane, for that overview. Broadly, I think this looks good. I would just make a request that for the edited cap that comes in on September 8th that either the chapters that have been edited go to the authors or co-authors, just to be able to see what was changed. And hopefully, 99% of that is just going to be very straightforward and won't require a reply. But just in the interest of kind of efficiency and eyes on that and comfort, I think it would be good to just make sure that those authors and co-authors have eyes on what was changed and are fully comfortable with it.
Okay.
That makes sense to me. And this one is the one where I might, like, as you think about the meeting, and presuming, and this is me being presumptuous, so you all discuss, but I assume you want to meet in September as a climate council, but don't know. But if you did, you might think about meeting the Monday between these two Fridays, in order for us to share that with you all on that Friday, talk about it on Monday, and give you all a chance to provide any concerns or comments back.
I think that's a good idea.
Awesome. Okay, Liz Miller.
Hey, thanks. This looks good overall. The only one that I had a reaction to, Jane, it sounded like you might have, at least you flagged the idea that some might have a reaction to it. Is it possible to move up the final? It feels funny to have it all the way at the end of January, as opposed to under the calendar year.
I honestly don't even know what that really is, because I would, and maybe I'll just privately Teams chat Sophie right now and ask her, because we're not graphically designing the entire cap. We are only creating a graphically designed summary document, and the final cap will really just be this edited version that we're working on, and then having a clean consolidated PDF on the website. So I know the final cap summary will be by the end of the year, and I'm not quite sure what the final cap in full even is. So let me just check.
Yeah, check in. I guess the feedback is that feels too late to have a January 30th date associated with our final plan.
Makes sense.
Right. Like wrap up the whole thing by the end of the year.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Other reactions for Jane or thoughts on the timeline here or its implications for the council? Okay. And then in terms of, Jane had a specific question there about the doing some webinars, some online meetings to roll out. Like at this point, is it better to do those sooner in the fall, or is it better to wait until you have some materials that are nicer, um, or even wait until January? I'm curious how people think about that. Jared?
I mean, my sense is that once the legislative session starts, a lot of public conversation kind of happens through the lens or connected to what's happening in committees and the conversation between, each chamber and the administration. And if we really want the focus to be kind of on the cap, on the recommendations, my preference would be to do it before the legislative session starts. I think the other benefit of that is that since the legislature is one of the key audiences for the cap, legislators may have more ability to attend a session than they would a cap session than they would during the session when their schedules get very busy. So I would suggest if we could do like one in mid-November, avoid Thanksgiving, and then one in early December, then we could have a couple of sessions before the legislative cap sessions before the legislative session starts. And I think that materials will be much further along then, even if they're not, 100% complete.
Okay, sounds sensible to me. Other reactions does Jared's plan make sense to folks? Any strong feelings about that? Okay. Jane, does that work, in your mind too, to do something like that?
I
One
agreed
in.
with that, by the way. Sorry, couldn't put my
Oh,
hand up.
thanks, Liz. Yeah, awesome.
Yep. Makes sense. We normally put them somewhat together, like a lunch and evening, but we can straddle it on 2 weeks or whatever with the holidays. Doesn't matter for us.
And Jane, do you have a proposal about whether they would both be in person with a virtual option, both be virtual, if they are in person, the different locations, or should we think through that together?
We were thinking virtual only, but just because of the capacity it takes to have them in person also, but be open to discussing.
Liz Miller, and then Julie.
Yeah, the only other question I had is whether, if at all, the rollout for the public kind of summaries would gel with what the administration's doing on their own kind of, you know, uh, work on functionalizing what's going on. It probably doesn't quite align, if I remember correctly, the timeline, but I'd be interested in hearing that, I guess.
Mm. Well, Julie raised her hand.
It wasn't to respond to that specifically, but I was just going to say I think I would vote for virtual only, both knowing what it takes for staff and just that a hybrid option is sort of the worst of both worlds, and can make it really hard to find a facility where folks that are in the room and online feel like are both able to fully participate. So would strongly urge virtual sessions. Or if we want to do one virtual and one in person, but to avoid hybrid sessions. In terms of policy development timeline, that work does take place during the fall, September, October, November, but generally those aren't being sort of shared broadly with the public until much closer to the legislative session. So I'm not sure we need to plan around that, although would defer to Sarah if she would advise otherwise.
I agree, Julie.
Right. Okay.
Great. Yeah, I was just wondering to the extent to which we'd have a public meeting or some discussion and then like a different message coming out of quote state government, since most people don't really make distinctions, but it sounds like we don't really need to worry too much about that because you're just doing policy implementation stuff and it'll be a little bit further out than these meetings likely.
So it sounds like. And I had one question for Jane and all of you, which is, the state is also doing this resilience implementation strategy. To what extent, Jane and others, have you thought about combining these big ideas together in a session versus separating them out fully, as both will be, live in the fall, so to speak?
It's a great question, David. And we haven't talked about this with the secretary, and Sophie and the team in the office have been really working, as David knows, to, we have this annual capacity through the CBI contract for a set number of public meetings, and then a set number, well, it's not a set number anymore. It's more of like additional capacity to do more unique and tailored engagement to try to strategically reach communities that we feel are focus or important to discuss different policy or climate solutions with. And so Sophie's been is in the moment now planning out what that capacity looks like with CBI and what our office looks like for the entire year. And that very much has been holding space for these virtual meetings for the climate action plan, but also some significant engagement around the resilience implementation strategy this fall. We have been thinking about them separately. And not together, in large part because it does often get messy trying to communicate, even though, Liz, you're right. I think the public doesn't often discern the difference between government and the climate office and the climate council, but we do. And we try really hard to communicate. Like the resilience implementation strategy is a state initiative, worked in partnership with the treasurer's office. And so we've been thinking about those separately, but how we message the different components, especially because the RIS will have costing and other proposals moving forward this fall. We plan to talk about our whole engagement plan for the use of our resources with Julie and others, to ensure it's aligned and think about talking points. But we will be doing it, and it will be important for us to be mindful about how the public perceives all of it. So I'll just say it's a good flag and maybe one to talk about at another meeting with you all.
Great. Okay. Thanks. All right. Anything else on these issues of the meeting, the virtual meetings and the editing and formatting and the like? Anything else? Awesome. Okay. And then that is a nice segue for us into the work of the council. There's a couple ways to dive into this conversation. One is, what does the council need to do from here to the end of the year? Like, what actually is high value for activating the council in this time period? When would be the best times to do that, right? In principle, what we had been doing prior to the update of the cap was the sort of quarterly check-ins with the council. That was sort of our rhythm. That could be the rhythm going forward. I'm curious, steering committee members, like, what do you see as highest value use of council time going into the fall? And then we can sketch out when to do it. We already know that we might want a meeting as that summary comes out to review that summary, and that would put us in a meeting in early-ish September. I think, what would that, September 15th would be that meeting. But other things on people's minds, what should the council be doing this fall? Jared? Jared?
I think that one thing we discussed towards the end of the process was a pivot from like the plan and its recommendations towards the implementation of the plan. And I know that there's a different role for the Climate Council in crafting the plan and its recommendations, and that the implementation is more on the administration and with the legislature. But I do think it's important for the council to have an idea of the implementation plan, including with especially those elements of the plan that there were dates set for in terms of when something would be drafted or complete or submitted. I think one thing that could be really helpful to the council and everybody going forward is a bit of an implementation timeline where we identify the key dates that were laid out in the cap, so that we can just keep track of when things are developing and use that to plan future council meetings to get updates on those around. Like I'm thinking, for instance, around the emissions reporting work that ANR will be doing. If we can get a sense of that timeline, so we know when it would be good to plan for an update for the council to hear about that process in the next year. That
Right.
thing.
Okay, that sounds sensible. Secretary Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that can happen with quarterly updates. I don't know that we need that things are going to be so time sensitive that doesn't work. I think it would be challenging for us to lay out such a schedule right now. We're working on our work plan for the coming year, and just feel like quarterly council meetings should be sufficient to keep the council apprised, give the opportunity to ask questions about progress that's being made. But I don't know that we need to be scheduling meetings based on particular deadlines beyond that.
Okay. All right, so if our operating assumption might be, and let's just test this right now, a quarterly council meeting, we can decide the length of it, if we need full 3-hour meetings like we had when we did this, or this is a much shorter kind of hour and a half, whatever you think, meeting. We know that in September, we want to be reviewing and providing some input on that edited text. We know in December, there may be something around the emissions reporting, right, Secretary Moore, because that was in the sort of timeline of the cap was talking about the end of this year, providing some sort of, I can't remember. My brain is a little weak, but there is something around the end of this year and
Yeah, I
emissions
think sort
reporting.
of a what it would take to do that work.
Yes, yeah. So December would be around there. Are there other things to be paying attention to? I know in past years, when there was large federal monies coming in, the council had some thoughts about um, use of those funds. I'm not sure how relevant that is right now. But are there other things that would be high priority for the council to work on in the fall?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the hand thing. It's
Yeah.
Liz. I don't think so much work on if we're gonna hold quarterly meetings, then thinking through the agenda in terms of what we've seen before of like updates on, you know, federal legislation that impacted Vermont. I mean, we won't have met since that happened. There might be a 10-minute section on what's happening there and what the state's doing. You know what I mean? Like, so it's more
Yep.
agenda items for the meeting than it is things the council needs to work on. Because at this point, I think it's just staying informed and having a pretty light schedule so that, bluntly, we don't overdo it before the next go around with new members, et cetera, either.
When you think pretty light schedule, are you thinking like a 90-minute meeting or something like that?
Yeah,
Or
max, I think. I mean, 90 just because we might have a lot of agenda items to go through. But yes,
okay.
that seems reasonable to me, especially because plain old scheduling and updates on when meetings are going to occur can happen separately, without quorum concerns or public records concerns, just informing the council of events and things like that. So yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. All right. So it's emerging as, again, feel free to push back, folks, have different views. What I'm hearing is quarterly meetings, about an hour and a half, heavy focus on updates. Those updates, we should be looking for any kind of implementation milestones that would be helpful for the council to be aware of or potentially weigh in on in any way. We've got a couple, like we've got at least one specific thing in September, which is that edited material we want to look at. Um, a standing item could be federal legislation that impacts climate in Vermont, climate action in Vermont. There may be some other standing items that, what the Climate Action Office is up to, or what's happening in other pieces of climate action, like the resilience implementation strategy or things like that. Sound good? Are we in the right zone? Does that feel right? So if this is the case from a steering committee standpoint, typically it's been our habit that 2 weeks before a meeting, we like to meet and get an agenda that looks good and that kind of stuff. So that still seemed like a good rhythm as 2 weeks before the steering committee meets and looks at an agenda. Yeah. Okay. And again, maybe it's not a full hour steering committee meeting. Maybe if we're just looking at an agenda, we can do it in a half hour and, be efficient with our time. Okay. Should we look at dates right now? We know September 15th probably is the September meeting. That would align with the consultant's time. And then we could pick a date right now for December. Also, it could be the 15th. Is there any reason not to do that?
One consideration might be having the December council meeting after the two cap sessions so that we can kind of debrief those.
Okay.
I know we haven't set those, but it seems like if we did do December 15th, that would be after the
Yeah,
we'd been talking about for those, but I would defer to Jane.
that seems, I see some head nodding there. Great. Okay. Super. So if we look at September 15th, December 15th, and then we would do a steering committee short call to look at agendas 2 weeks prior to that. Let's just look at the calendar for a second. That would be December 1st. if Mondays still are okay. And for the September meeting, it would be Labor Day, but the week of Labor Day, sometime that week we could meet if that works, like on a Wednesday or Thursday or something like that.
I will be out of town all of that week. Well, yeah.
Would
For
the week before be better? Like Monday, the 25th of August, something like that?
uh generally, but not that Monday either, as I have to return a kid to college.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
but the following
I'll
week
do
I
that
have
on Thursday.
an ECOS meeting, which is the entirety of the week, pretty much.
Okay. Well, if I don't, we don't need to solve this right now, but it sounds like either, Julie, if you want to deputize someone to be in your role the first week of September.
I can do that, or I was going to ask if we might look at the 8th.
Oh, just a week out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be fine for me.
Early would be great for me just because I've got something at 9 that day. So if we could meet at 8:30 for a half hour, that'd be perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that would be great.
Yep.
Okay. So steering committee call on the 8th of September for half hour at 8:30. Okay. And we could meet a steering committee on December 1st, again, for a half hour.
8:30 again?
I think so. It works for folks before
Yes,
the day
please.
gets really rolling.
That's probably fine. Pointing out though that it's the first day back after the Thanksgiving break, just the people's kind of alignment and awareness.
Right. If folks are going to be trying to not have to travel on a Sunday or something and traveling on.
Yeah, just figure it out as we get closer. But
Okay. Yeah. And if we need to bump it a day or more, again, 2 weeks is nice because it gives us a little time to get organized. If we need to get in tighter, that's fine too. Okay. And thanks, Kelly, for joining. I see you there. I know you're in transit. All right. I think that's as far as we wanted to get in today's agenda. We were going to, before I pause for any public comment, I'm just steering committee members, anything else about fall council meetings we should be thinking about right now? Okay. So why don't we pause? If you've been joining our call today and you want to weigh in from a public comment standpoint, let's do that now. And then we'll probably end a little bit early. Hey, Matthew, welcome.
Yes, greetings, Council staff members. Yeah, and I agree with Jared DeVault and Julie did more about having that virtual opportunity as recommended as usual because of, we do not know what next legislative session is going to bring. We do not know that. Even I don't know that. Yeah, but also, the question for Julia is, I understand government does a lot of agencies, does a lot of how to say it, collaborations like 10 agencies in one agency, which to me is, very, very confusing. From a public standpoint, I think we should keep that. I know that's normal in agencies of Vermont, but if you keep that separate, you might catch more, like there's a saying, you might catch more flies than anything else, from the public point of view. It might actually catch more people to join on those not just public officials, but also other agencies might be able to join with your effort if we keep them separate so people can understand, you know, what is one agency difference against the other agencies. Is that collaboration and cooperation that is very needed now than ever in my line of work, because without that we don't succeed. Vermont does not succeed. We don't survive, plain and simple. Let's not play games here. We don't survive if we can't collaborate or cooperate with each other. Believe me, I'm seeing this across my work, and it's real. Everything here, what we're doing right now, is real, and we gotta take it seriously. So it's just for my suggestion for the climate council is, you know, just make sure that the virtual opportunity is goes forward for everybody to participate, including our lawmakers, because they call all the shots. Let's be honest, they call every single shot that we make. So with the agencies, they have to collaborate with each other. So, but making sure that from my standpoint, from the public point of view, is to make sure that, that we're not trying to make it harder. We're trying to make it smarter for everybody to understand what we're saying, because, you know, such being successful, it all determines on collaboration and cooperation. Without that, we don't succeed. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate those comments. Anybody else out there has some feedback on the work of the steering committee today? Okay. Okay, great. I think with that, let's call it. Anything else before we round up? Anything else on people's minds that we need to pay attention to over the next month before we meet again? Okay. Great. Well, enjoy rest of summer. We will see folks. I think we won't see you till September 8th is what we agreed to. You know where to find us if there's any questions in the meantime. Take care, everybody. Lovely to see you this morning.